Hey y'all, it's fall. It's a little bit nippy out here today, which is good because we realize the heat of the summer is gone. We can finally, instead of taking things off, we begin to put things on, sweaters and jackets, so that we can enjoy the season that's before us. And so this is also the season, if you begin to look around, look behind me, that there are trees, the leaves on some have gone away, but God has been using this time to give us beauty. The green transition from oranges and golds to vibrant reds. And if you go up and down the side roads and the highways, little shops, little stands have popped up to give us the produce from the land that normally sits right behind it. Apples and peaches and pears and squashes and pumpkins. Who can't drive around this time of year without finding pumpkins galore? For me, it's apple cider, the fresh pressed apple cider. But that brings us to being part of the country. As those of us who live in the country, don't we take pride in knowing that chocolate milk doesn't come from a black cow? So all of this leads us to let's look at harvest. And how does harvest begin? We look at it from a farmer's point of view. Long before the season of planting ever begins, the farmer is out into the barns and into the equipment sheds, getting the equipment ready, making sure that everything is primed and ready to go. So the moment that the season is ready, the equipment is also ready. And so then they wait. And they watch the skies, they listen to the weatherman, and then they begin to make their final preparations. What seeds are they going to get? What is the different variation of the fields? Maybe this is the time of year where they rotate the crops and change it from corn to hay or from that to soybeans. The farmer has to do a lot in preparation to get ready for that season of planting, even before planting begins. The farmer goes out and tills the soil. And why do we till the soil? Why do we plow it up? Why do we disturb the land? We disturb it because we want the nutrients to be brought in and to be fresh. And we need to put air into the soil so that when the seed goes in, it's perfectly primed and ready for that seed to take hold and to grow. And so that then again, it's a waiting thing for the farmers because as soon as the fields are tilled, that doesn't necessarily it's time to plant because they know that each field is different by the way that it sits in the sun and maybe the water and the different things that go into planting. But when it is time, when it is right, the farmer goes out and he plants those fields. After the planting is done, the job is still not done. They watch the plants as they grow. They make sure that the fields are still in right and order. And so they may go out and they may use equipment to take away the weeds or to put additional fertilizers down at the right times. And then that day comes. That day that the farmer has been anticipating for so long. They go out, they get the equipment, and they go out and they begin to take the produce off from the ground and they bring it in. So what does this accomplish? Well, it accomplished the fact that the bills can be paid. The loans that they took out, the people that they have worked with all summer long, this is a time that the bills are paid and hopefully there's enough left over that they get to do it again next year. Let's look at the harvest season also from the point of the consumer. The consumer often goes into the grocery store without nary a thought of how the food got there, but they certainly love the benefits as they grill the steak out or the chicken or the fish, and then the vegetables that are prepared in special ways. Very little is thought of about the farmer and the people that have produced the crop to get it to them. We sit around our tables and we talk about the recipes that we have made. We talk about how we have prepared it. Oftentimes, if you hear me pray, because of maybe my closeness to the land with my grandparents and my uncles who used to farm, and also my father-in-law, I take time in my prayers normally to thank the Lord for the farmers that produced it. I also thank the Lord for the animals that have been put onto my plate, and I give thanks for all of that. And so now, as we begin to look at harvest and how we have experienced it, let's look at it from God's perspective. And by doing that, let's look at Matthew 22, 1 through 10. Jesus is talking in a parable here. He says the kingdom of heaven is to compare to a king who is giving a wedding feast. He's given a banquet. And so he sends out his slaves to his friends and says, come to the banquet. Unfortunately, though, we see in this passage that they're not ready to come. They don't have a desire to come. They're too busy to come. They're going to miss the blessing of the wedding banquet for the king's son. And the king is disturbed. He says, well, if my friends won't come, well, then I need to invite others. And so he sends the servants out again, and he says, go into the highways and the byways, get the good ones, get the bad ones, even get the outcasts. I want my kingdom to be filled. So let's reverse this process. Look at this from the process of what does the consumer look like. We, the consumers, we've received Christ. We have gotten to the opportunity of receiving his blessing. But we sometimes fail to forget how we get to this blessing. We just love the grace that's been given to us, and sometimes we fail to look through the entire process, the process of how did we become a follower of Christ. Let's now look at Christ and God's perspective. Much like the farmer, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. This world was prepared for us. Blessings were prepared for us. And the Holy Spirit works within our soul to prime us to be ready. It's like preparing our hearts, tilling the soil over so that when the nutrients go in and when the seed goes in, it's ripe and it's ready for us to begin to grow. And so we looked a few weeks ago as Tammy brought us the message on casting our nets. Why does God go through all of this? So that we can become part of the harvest. We can become part of becoming part of the kingdom, so we can come to the wedding feast, so that we can be part of all of that. And so we need to, like as Tammy said, prepare our nets. We need to become partners with the farmers. Or let me rephrase that, we need to be partners with God. We need to be part of the farming process. As we have been gathered in, we need to begin to gather those around us. But more importantly, is we need to be thankful for what God has given to us in this entire process. Don't take this lightly, but become part of the process to fully understand that God has prepared a way for us. And the harvest is now. Jesus says the fields are white with harvest, and he's looking for those willing to work in the fields, and he's calling you today to become part of this process. I'll see you next week as the journey continues.